week's very exciting chapter of Bleach, Ichigo and the Quincy leader continue to battle as the very universe around them crumbles as the Soul King slowly succumbs to the massive wounds from Ichigo and the Quincy army. This week's chapter was pretty interesting. I am a little disappointed in the fact that the Quincy leader is basically pulling an Aizen and saying that he's sort of been planning for all of this to happen. He's been waiting for Ichigo to get stronger and stronger because, in a sense, because they actually share the same blood, it's actually been sort of fueling him as well. But the most interesting elements to this chapter, personally to me, aside from the fact that the Quincy leader has been Aizenizing this entire plan, is the fact that Ishida Uryu has finally returned, and it looks like he's finally fulfilling his role as the Sasuke Uchiha of the series. This is the one thing I honestly didn't want to happen, because it seemed like the most obvious ploy for the final arc of the series. Let's pit Ishida up against Ichigo, and frankly, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, because this is something that's been boiling over since the introduction of Ishida in the series, and I always imagined the minute he was introduced that he was basically going to be the Sasuke-type character. Hell, even in the anime version, he's voiced by Sasuke as well, but the anime version no longer exists, and now we are stuck with the manga version, which is exciting, but it can be a little confusing at times. One of my biggest complaints about this week's chapter is that whenever there was an action scene, I found myself struggling, trying to figure out honestly what the hell was going on in all of the black and white madness. I could tell a lot of the times that Ichigo was simply trying to attack, he was jumping up in the air, but there were a few panels where I was just a little confused. But when Ishida finally does join this week's chapter, it does sort of mix things up a little bit, and it did get me excited, especially that badass pose that he's in, firing arrows at Yoruichi, and Yoruichi gets so messed up in this chapter, not just getting arrows fired at her back, but there's a scene when that one weird Jawa-looking Quincy just appears out of nowhere, who has a name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, and he ends up twisting up Yoruichi's arm like a freaking bloody pretzel stick. It's really intense, too, when they end up just throwing her off of the damn mountainside of the damn palace of the Soul King. It's really intense to see a character like that just get tossed to the wayside, and yet we still have Orihime and Chad and Ganju just sort of hanging out and doing nothing in the corner, while Ichigo decides, should I not use my Bankai or should I use my Bankai? Here's some advice, Ichigo. Use your freaking Bankai! This is the end of the freaking universe. Go crazy. You have got to take this guy down. So what's the rundown? On this week's chapter of Bleach, this was a very simple chapter right here, which, despite the fact that it was action-packed, did leave me wanting a little bit more. However, things are finally starting to move ahead a little bit. I am actually kind of surprised they got away from the Aizen stuff that they were focusing on in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, that's going to be a really big surprise, and there's going to be a lot of surprises for this final arc. If anything, we're just getting ready to hit the final switch on the self-destruct button, and that just means all of our favorite characters are going to have to come in and start fighting. Now, the thing about Ishida, I'm a little disappointed by that, only because, I mean, it was so obvious that they were going to have some form of confrontation eventually, and whether this is like a big ulterior plan from Ishida or literally he has the blood of the Quincy leader in him, so now that he's completely evil, it's kind of hard to tell at this point, and even Ichigo himself is pretty freaking livid and pissed off. The other thing that was kind of annoying to me about this chapter is that the Quincy leader is trying to be so much like Aizen and explaining that he's been sort of like wanting all of these events to happen and that Ichigo's the one who killed his mother, blah, 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 blah. It seems like every main villain of the series is trying to talk down to Ichigo and literally talk him to death before they decide to start fighting. And frankly, I'm kind of annoyed by that at this point, but still, this was an exciting chapter, especially all of the stuff with Yoruichi. She's definitely my favorite female from the entire series, and it was really shocking to see her get attacked this week, and in such a brutal fashion. I actually feared that she was going to be killed in this week's chapter, and in such an unceremonious way. And just the fact that that one Jawa Quincy arrived just means we're probably going to get the other three guys who are going to appear out of nowhere, and maybe that's going to be an excuse to see all of our main leads here actually fight against them, which would be interesting because, honestly, I don't think that Orihime and Chad are even close to becoming, like, as powerful as, say, Ichigo or Ishida at this point. but I'm really interested to see where this is going. Otherwise, this was a pretty nice, action-packed, slightly confusing artwork chapter, but still, I'm excited to see where all of this is going. Anything that really involves Ichigo gets me really excited, because he tends to be the most underused character in his own series, and just to have some dialogue from him and some action scenes is really great. I'm just really curious as to why he's not bringing out any of his big techniques quite yet. Maybe they're just trying to really save all of that for the big finale of the series. But until we get there, it's all just build-up. What I will say is, this was a pretty nice chapter that had some brutal action in it, and it is a little confusing in the artwork, but still, it was an entertaining chapter of Bleach nonetheless that you should definitely check out if you have been following the series. And now we just all have to ask ourselves, really, what's going on? What is Ishida's plan? My original theory is that this was all basically just a big revenge ploy to get revenge for the death of his mother, which that seems like what he did have planned from the beginning of this arc. Although now that he's being controlled by the Quincy leader, obviously his plans have gone completely out the window, and both him and Ichigo are going to be forced to battle each other, which, you know, they've never really had, like, a real big battle in the series. They've had a few small confrontations, mostly in the first half, but after that, they became teammates and sort of like rivals, you know, sort of Leonardo Raphael-esque. That's the way I look at Ichigo and Ishida, and it looks like things are finally about to get intense, and hopefully when they do fight, if they do fight, it's going to be really intense, because this is something they need to just go crazy with. But I don't want it to be like the dominating factor of the final arc of Bleach. I don't want the final thing I read to be Ichigo versus Ishida. It's way too similar to Naruto at that point. I want this to be a little more with the whole Quincy leader and Ichigo, maybe even throw in Aizen, and hell, give us Kenpachi back and all the other Quincy and frickin' Fullbringers and all those other guys that you were teasing at the very beginning of this arc. And where is Grimmjow? We want Grimmjow now! I know you guys do too. So, this was still a pretty fun chapter. It wasn't a perfect one for me, but still, I'm really excited still, especially for all the coming battles. This was just a decent action chapter that you need to check out if you are a fan of the Bleach series. So, I'm going to give this week's chapter a 4 out of 5. Not a perfect one. Some of the artwork was a little sloppy and confusing at moments, but it was still pretty freaking awesome and brutal. And as much as I don't want to see Ichigo and Ishida actually have to force to fight each other, I am excited that Ishida is finally back in the story, because frankly, he is still pretty freaking awesome. So 4 out of 5. Pretty cool chapter, not perfect, but one that you should definitely check out if you are a fan of Bleach, and let us all pray that once this arc is done, we can get it in anime form. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's chapter of Bleach in the comment section below. What did you think is the deal with Ishida in this week's chapter, and did you think Yoruichi was gonna die this week? What do you want to see from the rest of the final arc of Bleach? Remember guys, if you have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up cha. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and you should also check out our brand new video podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. Both Christian and I just sat down and we talked about all of the brand new spring anime, which is getting ready to be released. What shows do you guys want us to look at and review? Check out that video and let us know. Thank you guys for watching. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.